In this video, I'm going to talk about cameras and camera connections and some of the options that you have for hooking cameras up to your robot. So each of your robot kits comes with a Raspberry Pi, a standard Raspberry Pi camera that looks very similar to this one right here. This camera is connected to the Raspberry Pi through this white ribbon cable, and it connects into this connector right here on the Raspberry Pi. If we look down at the other picture of the Raspberry Pi, it's this connector right here. So you'll notice on the Pi there are two connectors that look very similar. There's the one I have circled, and there's also this connector right here. This one right here. They are physically exactly the same. This one I've circled in yellow is meant for connecting a screen, not a camera. So don't connect your camera up to that connector. We want to connect the cameras to the connector that's circled in blue. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to pass the flex cable through a slot on the Pi hat. Right here on the Pi hat, there's a slot in the PCB that allows a cable to pass down through that circuit board into the camera connector underneath. When it comes to hooking up that flex cable, there's a couple things you need to keep in mind, otherwise it won't work. One is the way that the cable goes into that connector. So you'll notice that one side of the cable has a solid blue piece of plastic on it. You need to put it in the orientation shown, or that won't work. The same goes for the camera. The Pi camera is not hot plug and play, or you can't hot plug the camera. That means that when the Raspberry Pi is powered on, if you unplug the camera, you can't. If you plug it back in, it won't function. You have to reboot the Raspberry Pi. So the only time that the Pi can detect the camera is on startup. So that's something to keep in mind when you're getting it set up for the first time. You need to start with your Raspberry Pi shut off, then you can plug in your Pi camera and then boot it up and it'll detect it. So in order to get this flex cable into the Raspberry Pi, I'd suggest hooking it into the Raspberry Pi and then sliding the Pi hat over top of the cable and plugging the Pi hat into the Raspberry Pi. You won't be able to get the flex cable into the connector if the Pi hat is already installed. You won't be able to slide it through the slot and get it into the connector. Another thing to keep in mind is to be very gentle on the little black latch that's part of the connector. There should be lots of videos online if you need some extra help or pointers on how to install the flex cable. But basically you need to pull the black latch up, slip the cable into the connector, and then snap the black latch back down and be very gentle with it. So that's the Pi camera. The Pi camera gives really good resolution and good frame rate. I would suggest that you use that camera for driving, for your main camera. There is the option though to add additional cameras, and that's why I've put this USB camera in here. So there really isn't a limit to how many USB cameras you can connect. The Pi has 4 USB ports, but if you needed more than 4 USB cameras, you could add a hub, although that's getting to be a lot of cameras. There's a lot of variety and quality of USB cameras, so my recommendation is to maybe try one out that you have and see what the quality is. But generally speaking, the better or more expensive USB cameras are probably going to perform better. I've done some experimentation with really cheap USB cameras from China, and they tend to not work very well. So you get what you pay for when it comes to USB cameras. USB cameras, it can be hot plugged into the Raspberry Pi. So when the Pi is up and running, you can plug in a camera and the software will detect it.